Alright guys, i20 N-Line driving review. Let's see. First thing I do when I get into the car, traction control disabled, ESC disabled. Perfect. Now we can drive it. Immediately after getting in the car and taking the first drive, you can feel that the suspension is stiff. You know, it is not obtusely stiff to be exact, but it you can feel it, right? And remember I was talking about the driving position. Yeah, it's a bit off. I don't know, with it yesterday when he drove this car, he seemed to have found the right position, but no memory seats in a car, and that's what happens. Anyways, so car stiff, not bad stiff, good stiff. You know, you get enough road feedback without feeling every bump on the road, and it tends to iron out the really harsh ones, yet give you a lot of feedback from what the front end of the car is doing. You know, see, you can't do this in a regular car. A regular i20 will actually just throw you out. This car just took it. That was at about 40 kilometers an hour. You can zigzag, throw the car around, no problem. Right now I'm driving without the AC on, I'll just turn the fan on maybe, because it's pretty chilly outside right now. It's 22 degrees, pretty neat. Yes. Gearbox right now is in D mode. Let it be in D mode. D mode doesn't seem to rev the engine too high, it gives you the best fuel economy. D mode gives you, I mean, it keeps the engine at 1500 RPM, so there's no jerk, there's no lurch forward. It's a very simple, quiet driving for most people, and that is good. So you can use it as a daily driver by just keeping it in D. Handling is brilliant. So, in terms of handling, right? So let's go to about 40 kilometers an hour, and then we'll maintain 40. The car has so much grip, and even with the shitty tires, no squeal. The steering, I know exactly how this car is behaving. You know, where the front end is, what it's doing. It's not losing anything. So, you know, try doing this in a Polo. It'll throw the rear out, or it'll just understeer. The steering wheel has so much feedback. It is absurd. And remember, I'm on C8 shitfuck tires. I mean, they're nice, but they're not a Michelin Pilot Sport or a Ultra Contact Continental. They are something you'll find on a, you know, Ertiga or something. Yeah. So even with those tires, the feedback from the steering wheel is crazy. You know, there is no dead zone in the steering wheel. You turn it slightly, and even the slightest movement of the steering wheel results in a direction change in the car, and that is the best part about it. So let's just see. I have a couple of twisties in my area. So, for example, that barricade. See, 60 kilometers an hour. Not a chew from the tires, even though the shit tires. Not a chew from the suspension, even though it's a stiff suspension. And bump. Not even, no harshness. I think they've done an excellent job on the suspension on this car. I'm driving nicely in D mode. In S mode it becomes a completely different animal. So yeah, steering is spot on. Steering is absolutely spot on. You know, you can have, like, I'm on a flat plain road. Normal cars, even in the Polo, in the Polo also, there's a dead zone in the steering. In this car, even the shit tires move the steering even 1 millimeter and instantly the car responds. There is no dead zone. So the response is so good that you can actually feel the front end. That's something which is unheard of in our EPS cars. Unless there's an active differential in there, there's no way you can feel the front end in the car. I don't know what magic Hyundai has done over here, but this car you can feel exactly what the front end is doing, how much grip it has, and where the car is going. The communication that the steering gives you, even with shit tires, is incredible. It's unlike any other car I've driven in this class and above. Even my Octavia RS doesn't have this much steering feedback. So, see, no problem. The car, the setup is so good as a stock setup that you can really throw it around without having the fear of it going out of your control. So now let's put it in sport mode. Sport mode basically makes your steering a little bit stiffer, I feel. I don't know if that's just me, but it definitely increases the response in the engine. So understeer, what understeer? What understeer? This is a hatch on shit economy tires, and that's what I can do in this. What more could you ask for it? Right. Let me just take that road again. I really like that road. I don't want to go into public roads too much because there's too many people around. So let this guy come. These are closed private roads, so I can hoon on them a bit and nobody will complain. Sports mode, engine is revving it idles it higher, it revs higher too, and it lets the engine go all the way up to red line if I want to. This guy, let's see, okay, here we go. Brake, F-con. I can't do that in a Polo. Nobody can do that in a Polo. Stock Polo, I mean, without understeering, all the ESP kicking in. Remember, I have the ESP fully off, so there's no electronic wizardry happening in the background trying to manage my traction. This is the chassis, this is the suspension, this is the steering which is doing that. Brilliant. I mean, if you feel a stock Polo can handle like this, good for you. I don't, and I've owned one. One of my biggest gripes from the Polo was the steering rack and the suspension, and that steering we couldn't change obviously, but we did a lot of work on my Polo GT suspension, and it took a while to get it to the point it was, but still wasn't this responsive. And this is stock. Imagine once we get some decent coilovers on this, it's gonna go crazy. And honestly, you don't need it. What this car would really add to this car is a sway bars, and upgraded sway bars on this car will just make it into a complete road hugger. Not that it already isn't, it's already very planted, and that's what I mean. When I say this is better than a Polo, it's the chassis. Polo is a chassis which was launched, I think, when 2008, 7, 8 in the global market. India, I think it came in 9. This is far better. This is a modern chassis. It's light. And it does it. It just goes. So the chassis is so much better. Even with the shit tires, the chassis and the suspension combined really make this car go. You can feel everything on the road in a good way, not in a bad way. And what you feel is how you react. And the Polo, the steering is dead. There is nowhere near a speed from the steering. The chassis is heavier, I think, a little bit. I'm not very sure about that, but it definitely is not as responsive as this one. The chassis on this one is really good, and trust me, I am a lifelong Volkswagen fanboy and even have a Volkswagen. I'm wearing a Volkswagen jacket while reviewing a Hyundai, so trust me when I say this car is way better than the Polo stock. Once you mod it, Polo is a different animal. This also with mods will respond even better because the base car is so good. But if you compare stock to stock, no, zero chance a Polo will ever out-handle this. Okay, so that talks about the handling, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to some better twisties. Let's talk about the gearbox. The gearbox on this car is a DCT 7-speed, same as the old Polo GT TSi. The new Polo gets a torque converter, and no matter what you say to me, a torque converter on a 1-liter engine is not a good idea. It'll just sap all the power. I mean, it'll be slower to shift, it'll be, no matter what Volkswagen say, torque converters don't belong in anything which is even remotely sporty. On the bigger V8 inline 6 engines, you can still get away with it because, you know, the mountain of torque available, you will not feel the lag. But on a small engine, torque converter is a very bad idea. This car has a DCT like the Polo GT TSi that I used to have, and it's fantastic. The only thing is, you know, the DCT first gear to second gear is a very slow shift. I don't know why, but it is a slow shift. So even in an auto shift, let's go down to first gear, right? In first gear, if I accelerate, let me just clear this barrier. If I accelerate, it just hangs for a second and then shift to second. But second to third is quick. 1 to 2 shift is slow. Second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth has become very fast. See? Third gear. You can't feel the second to third shift. But the 1 to 2 shift is really, really slow. I guess they're trying to protect the clutch, or there's some programming issue. I remember Ranveer, one of my friends, he had a Venue which had the first generation of this gearbox, and it didn't have this lag between 1 to 2. I guess because of the clutch heating issues that Hyundai was facing on their initial set of gearboxes, they programmed the car to be a little laggy in the 1 to 2 shift. But after 1 to 2, it's perfectly fine. There's really nothing called slow in this. Honestly, paddle shifters I'm not using much because, you know, if I want to cruise around, like laze around in the car, the D mode is pretty usable. I mean, D mode is all you need. You can just forget about driving anything, you know, paddle shifting, because the D mode will keep you in the highest gear possible, giving you the best fuel economy, and when you need to, it will downshift when required. And unlike the Volkswagen cars, which if you have ever driven a Volkswagen DSG in S mode, which is not mapped, you will hate it. But in this car, if you put the DSG in S mode, you can actually drive it like a normal car. It'll drive normally. There'll be no jerky shifting. So, see? And then coming down, braking hard, there's no jerks. Where the DSG would keep on, you know, revving up the engine and trying to use the engine to brake the car, which is even worse because it's a dry clutch and that heats up the clutch. This car does not do that, so you don't need paddle wise. I haven't used it much, honestly, unless I really want to do some stupid shit with the paddles. I'm not using the paddles at all. So you want to have a sportier drive, put it in sport mode, the car will accelerate like, you know, instant. There's no lag, there's no the sports mode in the gearbox keeps the engine revving higher, so you're always in the turbo's power band. In D mode, it'll keep the engine right below the power band, so it's more efficient. And if you floor it, it'll take a couple of seconds for it to shift down a gear, or, you know, rev the engine up to the power band. Like right now I'm in D and cruising around happily, right? I press the gas, there's a lag, halka sa lag, and then it goes up. That's the case in any kind of turbo car in D mode, and then it again goes down. So it's 1500 RPM, 2000 RPM. That is where D sits all the time. Now if I do it in S mode, then the car shifts above 2000 RPM, and it keeps the car above 2000 RPM except for in first gear. So I mean S2, it keeps in S2, S3 above 2000 RPM. So I'm Anytime I put the foot down, instantly the car reacts, and you have power to pass. There is minimal lag, obviously, because it's a 1-liter engine, but the gearbox is instant to react. The car's engine pulls up pretty fast, and it does what it needs to do to give you the power to pass or do anything in S mode. D mode, it takes a while, same case in every car, but in S mode also the car is drivable, you know. Unlike the VWs, when in S mode it's impossible to drive a DSG in S mode without, you know, pulling your hair out, because the constant downshift and rev match and braking, engine braking and all the stuff it does. This car you can drive it. You can drive it in S mode, like I've been driving it in S mode now. S mode, I've also seen one thing, it may do something to the throttle mapping. I don't know, maybe I'm just being oversensitive to it, but maybe it does something to throttle mapping, because the throttle mapping improves significantly in S mode. I mean, look at this. This is incredible. And it's a stock hatch with shit tires. Let me get my mask out. I need a mask. And it's a Hyundai. I mean, the words Hyundai and handling are, or at least were, polar opposites till the day. I know I used to own one of the first Hyundai i20 Asta 1.2 liter Kappa engine with the 5-speed manual transmission, and it was a shit car. It had no feel, no power, no handling, so brakes. But yeah, it was my first car in India because I wanted to get a small hatch which I could bang in traffic and wouldn't have to pay out of my pocket for it. A nice car, awful. Wow, that's a nice one. Wow, I guess today is Hyundai day. Modded out i20. This car looks the part and acts the part, you know. I'll do a short acceleration videos. I mean, the engine hasn't broken in yet. Engine is at 224 kilometers. So when we get out of this